Yeah.
All right, raspberry and chocolate's trending psychically right now for sure. So anyway, sexy self-care summer I put together because what I've learned in 9 years of doing Money Witch is that people do not want to they don't want to hear what I have to say in the summer. They don't want to do money work in the summer. Like, and so it's not just you. I'd like to really normalize that. It's true across the board. I learned a lot more about it this year because I feel like I was also kind of like just paying more attention a little bit. And because I have my my membership, my cult Money Coven, since January of this year, I feel like I really saw it in a different way, like what happens in the summer. And I'm just like, oh yeah, like it's like, no, this is not what we're doing. Dabbling, right? And for those of us who are self-employed, it's like, you have to do it a bit. I feel like the self-employed babes are the ones who like stick with it the most, but I really want to encourage people to kind of like just keep a little finger on the pulse of like self-care, combining, thinking about your finances with your self-care in a really like light way. And also that it doesn't have to be such a kind of like pendulum swing from like total avoidance or like complete obsession immersion. We can kind of just vibe seasonally with what's going on. And it's been fun for me to just think about other kinds of self-care. We've done like physical self-care, sexual self-care, just taking care of our bodies and our energies, our creativity, having fun. And that's fun for me to get to do something a little different. So the slumber parties have been really fun, and I've been really excited about opportunities to like get to have conversations about things that are a little different than maybe I usually do, and bring it in, weave it into money a little bit. But so our guest today is Shereen Sun, and I met Shereen because what pronouns do you use, Shereen? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I use they, them.
Okay. I met Shereen because their publisher or publicist reached out to me about their book, and I loved it. So we got connected. So I feel like you're like a newer internet friend. I love the web of the internet. And yeah, witches on the internet. I'm not sure if you identify.
Very much so.
Okay, good.
I'm an OG witch.
Cool. So the web of witches on the internet, and yeah. So you're new to my internet witch constellation, but yeah, I knew like as soon as we started this program and we were going to have people come on, I was like, oh yeah, because I think it was sort of the beginning of the summer, like late fall, when I got connected with your book. So I was definitely knew that I wanted you to come and talk about creativity, because it's such a good summer energy. And I feel like this Leo into Virgo too is so great, because Leo is like just so generative, creative, like the sun, the sun's like the core of all creation, really, in a way. And then Virgo's kind of like, okay, but how are you going to take it seriously and get some structure on it so that you can really like embody that energy and get to do it more, really. So that's what I like about your book. So the book is called Radiant Wildheart, A Guide to Awaken Your Inner Artist and Live Your Creative Mission. And it also came to me at a good time, because I feel like I'm one of those people who's like very creative, but like not an artist, but surrounded by a lot of artists. And it's always like, what if I went that parallel path and like became an artist instead? So it's always like good for me. It's a place that I like to get encouragement, or like, it helps me to be encouraged. So I've really
I would argue that
enjoyed
you're
it.
very much an artist. We've probably had this
Oh yeah.
conversation already. In the book, I try to blow up the definition of creativity so you can see that we are all artists, and this work that you're doing with money is so creative. And even the way you put together this presentation or this series, it's just I can see your art in everything that you do. So I'll just say
Thanks.
that.
Thank you.
And thanks for that intro. I'm so excited to be here. I love your community. I love your work. I love your book too. And it's been really awesome to get to co-create with you. And I'm so excited to get to meet your folks and talk about all things creative and keep it sexy this summer.
Mm-hmm. How's the end of summer feeling to you? Like, do you feel still in the summer energy? Do you feel like you're kind of feeling, we're calling it fall formation, like feeling that little bit of contraction in?
No, I feel like I'm just getting started this summer. I was a little contracted, and now I feel like I'm entering into my summer a little bit more, and I'm starting to get more energy now, actually.
That's cool. What do you feel like what do you feel like that's about? Like, what is it that's like feeling really like got you feeling more activated?
Well, let's see. I think I've just been feeling a little bit more settled in myself. And I think I've been doing some trauma resolution work as well that has really helped me just I went through a little bit of a challenging last 6 months, I would say, like kind of along with the introduction of the book in the world, because that was about when it came out, was in March. So it's still quite new. And I live in 24/7 sunshine around where I am. Hold on. Okay. Wasn't sure if there's some background noise. Can you hear me okay right now? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So I feel like I'm having a lot of transitions right now. I told you I'm moving and I'm having a pivot in my career as well into this more creative work. And so I just feel like I'm kind of just getting started into swing of things, like along with the trauma healing, feeling more capacity, feeling a little more inspired, a little more excited. So I'm feeling like I'm just getting started in some ways in the summer because I'm Shereen's son and I shine in the summer.
Yeah. We're getting, I mean, I know here it's like, it's hot, you know, so I'm in San Francisco. We don't get a lot of like hot, but it's like, it's finally like, you know, hot in the house. And I took my second blanket off my bed.
Oh, wow.
Weeks ago.
Yeah, not here. It's definitely been like 100 here. And so I don't think the summer's slowing down quite yet.
No, we've got a little bit of time. It's interesting. I feel like on the East Coast, it's sort of like, it's like a Labor Day, like it's like Labor Day, and then it's like summer's over. But on the West Coast, it seems to be a little more like flexy.
Yeah, totally.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about like how you got started in your artistry and in your like, I don't know, in your excitement about like your own artistry? I would imagine there's like an excitement about your own artistry, you know, and a kind of like awakening around that to kind of get you motivated to want to connect other people with their artistry.
Yeah. My commitment to creativity I always say it wasn't really a choice. I fell in love with the arts when I was in high school. I was actually like, have a lot of neurodivergence, not a good home life, queer, growing up in like an Orthodox Muslim household in the middle of Las Vegas, and was not good at school except for when it came to creativity and arts. However, for so long, I told myself that I'm not a good enough artist. I'm just an arts appreciator. I wanted to be an artist. I hung out with all the artists, but I was never willing to say that I'm an artist. I would literally correct people and be like, no, I'm just an appreciator. And really that was coming from a place of not feeling good enough or feeling afraid to be seen. There was all this like wounds that come up in our creativity that I was experiencing. Eventually, I did manage to get out of my hometown of Vegas, and I went to college. I went to a community college at first, and I started picking more creative classes. And suddenly, I started doing very well, and I started like accomplishing for the first time because I was getting to choose what I wanted to focus on. And so around that time, I ended up going to school for art history. So I was again studying lots of artists. I wanted to be a studio art major, but I walked into the painting class and was totally intimidated, even though I was a painter, and walked right out, dropped the class, never looked back, became an art history major instead. But eventually I decided I needed to choose some kind of stable career path. I had this like pressure from my family to do that. So I decided to become an art teacher. And I went to school for art education, focusing in urban schools, working with lots of at-risk youth, teaching art, putting a paintbrush in their hands, and getting to heal my inner child through working with kids. I worked predominantly in elementary schools. And I got to see firsthand this process that kids go through, that I went through, of going from being wild and free and expressed and not caring what anyone thinks about you. And then slowly the insecurities start to set in. You get more conscious of what other people think about you. You get more sensitive to what people are going to say about your artwork. Even your teacher might have made some kind of comment that stays with you. How many people here can think back to like certain moments where someone said something or something happened and that impacted how you feel about your creativity even to this day? Maybe it's like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, my doggy.
We want to see the dog. We want to.
You want to see the doggy?
Dog.
I can definitely do that so that she stops barking at nobody outside. Come here, cutie. She's a puppy.
Oh, oh.
She's
just
8 months.
Baby.
She's just a baby.
You're just a baby.
You get to be on the couch now so that you stay quiet. I know. Congrats. Okay. So yeah, I was asking how many people here can think of those moments where you've got your creativity was fractured. I call it the sacred creative wound. I definitely have one. I have one from my singing teacher in middle school. And I, to this day, have so many issues with singing, even though I love to sing and I actually can sing. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm curious if you want to type in the chat what happened, what art form were you practicing? Like, what are those moments that you can think of where a side comment or something somebody said really Susie. Stuck with you?
Yeah.
It was a bit sparse, said my art teacher who was trained to teach geography. Ugh, exactly. Yeah.
Also and then in the chat, Shanga wants to know what kind of dog and the dog's name.
Oh,
important.
Okay, so this is Citra Buttercup. Citra is her South Asian name, which means light beam, and Buttercup is what she came to me from the rescue as. And she is part Cocker Spaniel, part mini poodle, and part Chihuahua. And she's 8 months, so she's a baby. And she was found at a cardboard box at the grocery store. I know. Now she's thriving. So yes.
Yeah, the wounding. Oh yeah, it was making me think of. I was a dancer as a kid, and I remember feeling like at a certain point, kind of feeling like, oh, I can't, like, I'm not gonna be considered to be like a dancer as an adult because I'm too big. And then, and it's like shocking. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this experience. If I look at pictures of my body at that time period, it is shocking that anyone or me would think I had a big body at all, So yeah. But I really remember that, like, oh yeah, like I'm not gonna be, like I'm not tall enough and I'm not skinny enough to be a dancer.
Right. Now it's coming up as like, I'm too old to get into that at this point because you have to be like in your 20s. Yeah. So those fears of being seen, our creativity is so vulnerable. And as a kid, I got to see these, or as a teacher, I got to see what kids would be moving through when their feelings would get hurt in art class and they would have these huge meltdowns. And it was like not really the right size of a meltdown for what was actually going on, but you could see that creative process really brings up something very important, very sensitive. And a lot of times kids get shut down, or even I say we're all like inner children artists. We all have an inner child artist inside of us. And sometimes we get those fractures in our creativity and we get shut down, and we carry that with us through adulthood. And we have these feelings about who we are or what we're capable of. And the reality is that everybody is an artist, everything is art, and you can get better at any medium that you practice. So I've had a lot of fun since then. Since then, I also left schools. I started teaching art to all sorts of different people. I started a nonprofit working with people who had been recently incarcerated, kids in the foster care system, kids on Skid Row, teenage mothers in Panama, all sorts of people, helping them heal using creativity and working within communities. So there's a big like community building aspect to the work that I do. And I've just been doing that ever since. So for me, it's a calling. It's what I've always needed. It's the medicine that I really need. So I always like to tell people that even though I'm out here talking about creativity all the time, and I went to school for it, and I've been doing this since I was 18, I've been teaching art. It's not because it comes easy to me. In fact, it's actually the opposite. It's because it's super challenging, but it's exactly the healing and the medicine that I need. So I always say we teach what we need to learn on some level.
Absolutely.
I'm going to check out what's going on in the chat.
There's a lot. Yeah, really excellent, like beautiful sharing in the chat. It reminds me, I mean, I feel very similarly in my money path, and I don't know if you relate to this, but it's been really important to me in my money work, you know, several times as I work with different producers or just different people who have like a concept, like they're like, oh, we want to position you as an expert. And I'm always like, I'm not an expert, like I'm a guide, you know. That's very important to me, is like I'm also on a journey and I don't have things figured out, you know, and I'm also like striving. And I would imagine that will be true like for the rest of my life. I don't even know if I mean, expertise is a real thing. People work really hard to, you know, to become highly skilled, right, in their fields, but it's also not, I don't know, it's not the only like orientation of teacher to student either.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think everybody can be a teacher. And I actually encourage people to teach even if you haven't mastered something, because through sharing it and through explaining it to somebody else, you embody a whole new level of mastery. So, and there's so much more to life than just academic credentials or licenses, as we know, are often colonized in the first place and gate kept. So there's so many other ways to get experience and to get the confidence. And for me, I've chosen to teach as a way to embody the things that I know that I need for myself. So even when I was a teacher, when I was an art teacher, I was definitely in front of a classroom of like 7-year-olds being like, oh my God, they're going to find out that I like can't draw that well.
Yeah.
They're 7, like literally who cares? And not only that, but they were not ever looking at me like that. They were looking at me like so impressed by my confidence while I was drawing. So, but I've been through so many different kinds of training in schools to learn how to teach, and teacher trainings for yoga and all sorts of different things in education, master's degree in education. And I can tell you that the way to get confident is just to get up there and do it. No amount of school or training is going to help you break through that barrier of being seen besides just doing it.
Well, and that's the Leo Aquarius axes also, you know. I'm still a little bit, I mean, I'm into Virgo's season, but I'm a little still, my brain is partly in Leo season. So, and that's my like north south node, so I think about it a lot. But it's kind of like, you know, the Leo north node is sort of like, oh, just do it. Like, you don't need to gather more information. You actually need to like focus on embodiment, you know?
Yeah, my north node and south node, as well as my sun and my moon, are both Pisces and Virgo. So I definitely feel like that informs a lot of what I do also.
I also like that idea. I feel like I'm hearing, because it reminds me, you know, my money coven premise is like, I say like bad with money is not a personality trait. It's a statement of literacy, you know, and it feels really resonant with like what you're saying, and I like the idea of thinking of art as a literacy,
Mm,
and it's like,
that's beautiful.
yeah, we have these expectations like with money, and I can think of some differences but also some similarities, right? With money, it's like I've also noticed in exploring more into that idea of financial literacy, um we have these expectations of ourselves to almost have like sort of inborn literacies, but
Hmm.
actually like literacy is not an inborn quality, right? Like it's a cultural infusion, and it's
Mm,
built through familiarity and repetition and like building relationship with something that's being like taught to you. But we often like expect our literacy level to be higher than what we've actually been educated in, and then feel
hmm.
a lot of shame about that gap. And I feel like with art, there, at least for me, I think I kind of have this feeling of like almost like, well, you're born with it. You know what I mean? Like you either like
Totally.
art, art skill, like
You're
you kind of either
talented or
got
you're
it or
not.
yeah, exactly, or you don't. Um and I know that you can learn to get better. So I like the idea of thinking of it as building a literacy.
Yeah, I think what comes up for me when you're saying this is play and fun, because so often in our creative practices we really suck all the magic out of it, and we do that by being so focused on the outcome because we see other art that inspires us and we have good taste and we want to be able to do what they do right away. But we've all seen that image of like the iceberg and you just see the tip of the iceberg. You're just seeing a final product of somebody's. You're not seeing all the hours and the time that they put in to show up to their practice and get into that flow state. All of us can find that flow state, but the way we're going to get there is not going to be through judging and shaming ourselves. In fact, if we do that, we're not going to want to show up for it at all because it's not going to be fun and it's not going to be enjoyable. And for me, I've become so interested in the like expressive arts healing aspect, the therapeutic aspects of it. And for that, you really need to be not thinking about the final outcome or what it looks like or what other people are going to be thinking at all. You really just need to let yourself get in the moment and practice letting yourself be free, letting yourself be expressed, letting yourself explore. So much of creativity is about exploration, taking risks, trying things on. And so you have to let yourself do that. And there's going to be lots of things that you create that people don't even need to see if you don't want to. So, and that I think is how you can build the literacy that you're talking about. It's really just getting more comfortable, letting yourself flow, because that's what creativity is.
Yeah, it's such a challenge. I definitely relate to the like, there's a gap between my taste, which is excellent, and my technical skills in certain practices, which are not as excellent. And there's almost like a grief there, sometimes, or definitely a frustration. I feel like through my business, I'm better about it now. I don't cry as much now, but every time I've undertook a different creative process. So it happened for the first time for me with branding, and then like my product photography, and then less with writing the book because I had a little bit more skills at that time, but I would cry. Like I would get so frustrated talking to someone because I have a lot of vision, but it's like you have to be able to tell. It's like when someone else is doing it for you, it's almost like they are your hands, in doing something, and you're trying to like convey a vision. But if you don't have the technical language, it can be really challenging. So, um, yeah, I've really appreciated the literacy, the arts literacy that I've even gained, just from being in those kinds of projects with other technical people. Like I'm able to say like, oh, this is what this, wrap the text like this, or I want it to, be that, like different words where I was just like, before I would just cry because it could be so frustrating.
Mm, yeah, it's true. And now I notice it seems like you feel more comfortable doing those things. since just doing it more and more.
Yeah, I think more, and just having a little, I don't know, like having a little bit of the language has felt very empowering, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really just permission, permission to spend time. Like the only way I got there is through saying like, yeah, this is worth spending time on.
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons why I love education and art education specifically. I've put myself in art classes and then I started teaching art classes. And to this day, I love taking classes about things that I want to learn. And that has been me holding myself accountable to the practice. Has been through putting myself in environments where we're using these words, we're learning the language, or even just showing up for a class every week just because it's fun. Like there's probably, how many people here have a medium that you've been wanting to try, that you've been wanting to try for a while and you haven't yet? Can you type what it is in the chat, please? I'm curious. So maybe you want to take a class or just find a meetup group of people who are talking about those things and doing those things. And what I want to say is that you don't know how many benefits are going to come from that. Like you're being called to those things for a reason. We don't know what that reason is. The only way you're going to figure it out is if you follow your creative curiosities there. So it's more important than you might think. And we don't know exactly what the gifts are of you showing up for your creative practice, but whatever it is going to be magical and exactly what you need in your life. How cool. Ceramics, animation, making videos, painting, watercolor, stained glass. Me too. I've always wanted to do stained glass. Cool. I love it. Okay, for the stained glass nerds, if I may just show a wall hanging that I have of the rose window in Paris. Okay, that's my stained glass moment.
So beautiful. did you, or do you like ongoingly struggle to give yourself time to be creative, or like to just play? Like does it feel kind of like, I don't know, for me I feel like that's the block, is like being like, yep, this is a time priority.
For sure. And it's not actually a time priority, but yes, I do tell myself all the time. I mean, that has been the biggest pain point of my life, I would say, is that I want to make my art and I feel like I don't have the time. And I'm just like, it's like there's no choice there. It's like my life, I'm just not able to. But what I've realized is that a lot of times that is actually trauma, because in order to sit down with your art, you have to face yourself and face your feelings and sit with all the emotions that we run from by being too busy. And that's at least is what it has been for me, because after all these years, there's no way that I'm just like always too busy for this thing that I know is so important. And sometimes I feel like we overbook ourselves. I mean, I know for me, another story that I've had is like, oh, this isn't actually that valuable. What's valuable is capitalism, making money. That's what I need to be spending my time doing. Painting, who cares? Even though I care. And I also, again, have been doing this my entire adult life. So obviously other people do too. Not to mention everybody here has named all these art forms they want to try. So of course it matters, but I think we have a lot of deconditioning to do about the way artists are talked about and treated. Even in schools, the arts programs are the first to get cut because it seems extra. But when you look at the stats, people who have better, or schools who have better art programs, their students show up for class more often. They do better across all subjects. You can use creativity in every field, and our world is changing and we need new solutions. We need creatives. We need people to imagine what the future is going to look like in a hopefully post-capitalist world. But
it makes me think of holistic health too. And I know I live really close to San Francisco City College, and one of my closest friends is a professor there, an English professor, but she also was like the president of the union, the teachers union for several years. So I was getting all the gossip, and they've done a lot there where like they've really, and I know that this is happening, in education all over the country, which is like really deprioritizing and trying to kind of cut out things that are not
STEM.
degree like if it's not for a degree or a certificate, you know, like they're basically like all these adults are just coming here and taking classes, which is like, it sounds like a great thing. And that's, you know, like adults are just coming and just taking classes for no reason, you know, for no reason, right? Or like not to achieve any particular degree or certificate, and really kind of like, I don't know what, I mean, whatever, I'm sure it's money, right? But the corporate motivation there has been to kind of like trim that down to be like, no, this is just for people who are coming to like take these degree programs. But it's really the adult education, quote unquote, for no reason, that is so nourishing and like allows us as a people, you know, as a population to be like you're saying, much more innovative people, much more like out of the box thinkers or whatever, you know,
Mhm.
other terms. And
Even
it
just getting to know yourself, like that is so valuable, being present with yourself and with your thoughts and transmuting it through art for mental health and so many things beyond just capitalism.
what do you do with all your bad art pieces?
Ooh, another
Do you
pain
throw them
point.
out, or like what do you do
Ah,
with them?
unfortunately, I have had a long history of throwing away art and then regretting it. Anyone else?
I've thrown away a
Yeah,
lot of art.
I've thrown away a lot of art. I wrote a story in my book about like very dramatically throwing a painting into the dumpster and then regretting it, and I still regret that. So yeah, I have done a fair amount of throwing it away. A lot of times though, what I would say to a student is that it's not done until you're satisfied with it. So you can keep working on it. Mistakes are beautiful. It's where you get to grow and you get to explore a new way to fix it. There's solutions for everything. So mistakes can sometimes be the most interesting part of the process, and it'll take you somewhere you wouldn't have otherwise thought about. So I would encourage you, if you have the urge to throw your art away, put it away, take a day, come back to it, and it's not finished until you feel good about it.
Yeah, it's complicated, right? Because I feel like I'm seeing the tension even in the chat. And I know I felt it too. Like, you know, you regret throwing things away, or you want to like keep them. But then at the same time, it's like, okay, we have so much stuff, you know, or like, what do you,
Hmm.
after a while, like, what do you do with it? And
And sometimes I think it's okay to throw things away. Like again, for expressive arts purposes, it's like the point is not to hang it up on your wall. And we're kind of like centering the visual arts, but I want to name like
totally,
so many different art forms, and it could be cooking, it could be how you parent, it could also be any other art forms. I think a lot of times we think of art as just the traditional mediums, but there's so many other ways to be creative that people you probably are engaged in already.
the archiving is so okay. It makes me think of a couple of years back. I went with a like lover at the time to into a studio. They were recording an album, and there was this whole thing about like backing it up and what it was going to be backed up on. And our audio producers engineer person was like telling us this whole thing about like how long does a hard, you know, but it's like hard drives only last for so long. So it's like even if you have it archived on a hard drive, then it's like, okay, transferring and transferring and transferring, and just kind of like thinking like, okay, are you just gonna like transfer this onto another hard drive like every 5 years for the rest of your life? And he was telling us apparently also like Blu-ray is like the longest lasting like archival
huh.
substance, I don't know, you know, medium or whatever. But yeah, I think at a point, like I know a lot of the times when I've like let go of art, it's been when I was kind of just like, I'm making some major life move and I'm just kind of tired of schlepping whatever it is, right, you know, from one stage to the next. So it is such a complicated relationship to like what we're carrying with us, and
Yeah, I think
journals,
whatever
all that.
happens, oh, journals for sure. Yeah, I think whatever happens, it can always be fixed. And there's some people who lose their entire hard drives. It happens, or people like me who throw stuff away. At the end of the day, how I feel is that I know that my creativity is so infinite and not everything needs to be kept. Some things might be ephemeral, some things might, and there's something beautiful about that too. Like I love street art, which sometimes gets painted over pretty quickly, or performance art, which obviously doesn't stay in one place. And there can be something so beautiful about that too. So your creativity is infinite. It's a renewable resource. It's never going to end. And no matter what happens, whether you lose something or you have to recreate it, like there's always a solution to make it work.
What do you think? I mean, I know obviously you wrote a whole book about it, so there's a lot of options, but like what, since we're kind of in this like sexy self-care mode, and I do think like sex, money, art, like creativity, they're all just sort of like energetic threads, right? And I think of kind of like, for me personally, I feel like sexual energy is a kind of energy that I need to like move in my life. And I've started having more of a relationship with creative energy like that too, right? Where I'm just like, oh, I experience frustration when I'm like, I'm not moving creative energy through fast enough. And I experience it. It's interesting because there's a sort of like capitalism hook there, because or like I experience it as like frustration about I find myself jealous of other people who seem to be much more prolific with their creativity. And by that I mean like they seem able to like move their creative energy into, produced output like much faster. My projects seem to take a really long time to gestate, and I get frustrated also because I have so much Aries in my chart. I'm just like, but I've also started to realize like I think I'm just like not moving that creative energy, quickly enough. So is there any kind of like self-care tips you could give us to make sure we
this
have
circles
that
back
time?
to your first question about feeling like, do I feel like I'm consistently creative enough? So I think self-care wise, and in terms of creating a consistent practice, it's important to make it accessible to you. And for me, that has looked like changing my life around, changing my career around, changing my business radically to make the space to support my art, versus in the past, it was about scaling my business. And now I realize that the only reason I want to scale my business was so that I could make my art, and I can just do that. But for me, it's been about making it accessible. So that means like having the spaces ready in my house, dedicating space to it, making time for it, trying to structure my schedule to accommodate it. Whether it's like 5 minutes in the morning of journaling, I do a lot of like 5-minute art practices. I do actually have a calendar of prompts somewhere that I can pull for you before the end of this, or we can email it out.
Yeah, if you drop it in the chat at some point or send it to Gwen, then we'll get it in the follow-up email this evening.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll send it to Gwen. That sounds good. But yeah, it's a calendar with prompts every single day of 5-minute or less art assignments. And again, this could also look like just being more intentional with how you are nourishing yourself, how you're feeding yourself, making a bath and putting flowers and putting essential oils. Every moment you have an opportunity to make a creative choice, and a choice that brings you closer to expressing who you really are and how you truly feel and what you truly want, or it takes you further away, because a lot of times we choose to like put all that stuff in the closet and not look at it and just go about business as usual. So can you find ways even in the morning when you're getting ready, when you're doing your hair, when you're setting your intentions for the day, when you're connecting with your friends? There we go. Yeah, there's always opportunities for you to be creative. So how can you make it more accessible to you, whether that's by putting those traditional mediums around your house, setting up a painting spot if that's what you want to be doing, getting your journal out and putting it next to your bed in the morning. Dancing to your favorite song is one of my go-tos. Dancing to like songs that I loved when I was little, or singing, belting them out. You can go to a class. So even just simply signing up for a class that you go to every week, boom, now you've got a creative practice.
It's a container.
So there's all sorts of ways. Yeah, and
Yeah.
being in a container, of course. Yeah, is always helpful.
Do you feel comfortable sharing what are the songs that you love to dance to?
Ooh, okay. I am a teeny bopper turned punk rocker. That was my like trajectory. It was um Backstreet Boys, Britney Spears. I do a lot of Britney to this day. Christina Aguilera, Aaliyah, of course. Um, NSYNC, just all the teeny bopper stuff. And then Blink 182, and then that turned into like pop punk and rock and roll. And now we're in electronic music. So that's been a little bit of my trajectory. But I always go back to like, I'll listen to the Spice Girls, these songs that we just
Spice
know.
Girls is a great, like, get it out, get
Yeah,
the
because
wiggles
you can
out.
just feel how much you loved that music when you were young. Like I feel like we all just want to feel something. Like, can you connect to your? I've been doing what I've been calling reclaiming my sparkle, which has been a lot of
Hmm.
revisiting things that I loved when I was younger, when I felt just like way more free and less jaded by the concerns of being an adult. And going back to that place because I was very curious, even though I was a little like afraid to claim my artistry, in reality, I was out there adventuring and connecting with artists and being a part of the arts community where I grew up. So I prompt that to you. What would it look like for you to reclaim your sparkle? How many people feel like when they were younger, there was like a sparkle that maybe has gotten a little lackluster these days, especially through the pandemic? Yeah, so what would it look like for you to reclaim that and revisit that and find those things that made you feel something and explore it again?
I started a couple of years ago. I always was like a bit of a journal. I don't like kind of like scrapbooky journaler. Um, and like not a lot of like confessionary writing really, but just sort of like as things come up, or if I do a tarot reading, something like that, I write it in the book. But I've done a lot of, this is like an old one or older at this point, but I started I was like, oh, I want to like decorate the cover of like my binders
Love
and my,
it.
just like cut things out and, cut and paste a lot of like cutting and pasting pictures, especially from fashion magazines, things like that.
Awesome.
And I also, that's a little money trick too. It's not for everybody, but I have found repeatedly that sometimes when people have what feels like a challenge around like shopping too much, it's what I call like the femme curatorial mind instead, where I'm
Hmm.
just like, there's a part of your brain that is like, because I've always related artistically, I feel like um a lot of my creativity lies in the curatorial realm rather than like maybe in the like, I don't know, express, drawing or visual arts or those kinds of things. And but it can manifest through shopping, right? Because you're like, oh, I like to find objects and kind of like curate them into something. But sometimes people will be like, I have these things and I like don't even need them. And I had a client recently who we were talking about that, and she's like actually made a huge leap in that she felt like she was spending a lot of money buying like vintage clothes online, and then she realized like, but she's like, I don't even want them, like I don't want to wear them. And she was like, really, I realized what I wanted to be doing was sewing, and I wanted these objects because they were like inspirational objects, like
Hmm.
I was so inspired by the object. um so we talked a lot about using Pinterest. I really advocate for either collaging or Pinterest to kind of like fill that urge, and kind of, you know, it's almost like a, I don't know, there's multiple places I think where kind of like creative desire can get sidetracked into like a consumer,
Totally.
desire.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I definitely felt that way in the past. I would just kind of like hoard art supplies and I would buy everything you need for a certain medium, but I still wouldn't show up for the actual practice to use them. So they would just sit there because I aspirationally wanted to do these things. And it's
Yeah.
sometimes easier to just spend money than to actually sit with yourself and sit with your emotions. Have you ever tried any like performing arts, or I could see you doing like stand-up or theater or something like that?
I'm kind of a terrible actress, actually, which I've learned through my business a little bit. It's like if anything's scripted, I'm a good off the cuff orator, but like when things are scripted, I don't sound like myself. Yeah,
Storytelling
maybe I
could be
should try to be
one.
a stand-up comic. I'm gonna
I
be
could definitely see that.
I'm gonna be an old lady international party girl DJ. That's like definitely
There
the
you go.
creative path that I'm gonna
Love
take.
it.
Um, and I love to dance. I mean, I was a competitive dancer from like 4 to 14.
Okay, so you're completely an artist
And then I
then.
was
Thank
a
you for that.
stripper for another like 8 years. So
Oh,
it's like I love to
amazing.
dance. I think, when people are kind of like, oh, if I don't know, money wasn't an option or what, what would you be? And I was like, I think I would be like a showgirl. Like I love dancing in shows.
Hell yeah.
I
I
think that
love
would have
that.
been a
Me
path.
being from Las Vegas, I actually want to do a lot of research on showgirls of color. I love showgirls. And I
I
love that
love
you were a
showgirls.
dancer.
Yeah.
Showgirls are so amazing. I love that you're a dancer. You've got this curatorial side. Another thing you could try is like making an installation, like curating some kind of space. That would be
I
interesting, maybe at a
have it's
festival or
my house.
something.
Yeah. I feel
Yeah,
good.
there
See,
you
I'm really
go.
related to the like, I'm like, to me, getting dressed is a creative practice. Like cooking is a creative practice, my
Yeah.
house is a creative practice.
And I want people to try and find those things for yourself because you probably are creative in a ton of different ways, but in your mind you think, and I felt this way for so long because I'm not that great at representational drawing, or rather I just haven't practiced it that much. And so I've always felt that's been a big insecurity when it came to making art, was like I need to be better at representational drawing. But there's so many ways that I'm creative. You just named a bunch of ways that you're creative too. So we're all artists in conclusion. Thank you for being an artist, everybody.
We have a question, and I know you have a thing you want to do at 7, so I don't want to keep you too late, but we had a question which is, my daughter is incredibly creative and talented artist, but hates everything she makes. What do you tell your students when their self-esteem is low after every piece they create?
Yeah, it sounds like she might be struggling with some very intense perfectionism. And there are definitely gifts to perfectionism. My niece is the same way. She's like unbelievable at drawing anatomy, but she's such a perfectionist. She literally thinks everything sucks. And I'm just like, you're amazing at this, but okay. So I think putting her in environments where there is less of art classes for one thing, like having her with teachers who can kind of help walk her through some of those things, but also like the expressive arts, like I was saying, where it's not so focused on the outcome and she can tap into some of the other beautiful benefits of creativity, like for example, that it feels good, that it's good for your mental wellness. Maybe she wants to like make something that she wants to share, just helping her find the fun in it, because if she hates everything she makes, like that's not fun. That's her kind of sucking the fun out of something that really ultimately probably is her purpose and brings her a lot of joy. So let me go back to this question. She's incredibly talented but hates everything she makes. Another thing might be, I would just love to see her in a space with more artists around and that they could explore it. For example, when you take an art class when you're older, sometimes they do these things called critiques, which sounds kind of scary, but it's actually really cool because you can start to get feedback on the work that you're creating, or she can talk to somebody about what she doesn't like and kind of have them help walk her through it. That could be something that even you could do. If she says she hates it, you could ask her, well, what do you hate about it? And then try and provide her with some ideas on how she might want to fix it or how she might want to adjust it, or perhaps ask her what does she love about it and just try and support her to get out. It's really easy to get into these like self-loathing cycles and self-depreciating, let's call it, where in this world we're taught that you don't want to brag, you don't want to take up space, otherwise you might be too conceited, and then it just spirals from there. So I'm sending her a lot of love, and I think that keeping creativity alive for her by putting her in spaces with other artists and people who she can connect with on that level, where it's not just like her and her fears and her insecurities, and it's more like the fun of collaborating with other people or talking about art. Art is so fun. So if we can get her tapping into the fun aspects of it rather than the emotionally draining parts, and maybe even addressing that perfectionism in other areas of her life, I think it helps a lot to just be able to have a name for that and identify, okay, I have a perfectionist in me. And then she can kind of separate herself from it. It's not like this is her. It's just this, I call them your inner overprotectors. Your perfectionist is trying to protect you from being rejected or having somebody say your art sucks, which would be the most hurtful thing. So why not just say it about yourself before anyone can hurt you? So yeah, helping her navigate perfectionism. My niece, I'm happy to say, like, she now is at it. She's been like this since she was small, but now she just posted a story and was kind of like cracking a joke about her perfectionism. And even that is such huge progress because she's aware enough to know that her art doesn't actually suck. She's just got this perfectionist tendency, and maybe that'll help her work with it a little better.
And being surrounded by other artists too, I feel like can normalize the process and normalize feeling critical of the things that you make. That doesn't mean, oh, stop making them. You know, like you can have a process where art feels frustrating or it feels challenging, or you feel low about it, or you feel, you know, whatever, critical of what you made, you wish it was different, but that doesn't mean stop doing it.
Yeah. Another thing it might be good would be to like talk to her about her values around art and creativity, not even about herself. Like, okay, well, do you think that everybody is an artist? Do you think, like, just kind of probing her a little further about, because ultimately we're all artists, we're all creative, and there's so many different ways to make art. The way she's doing it might be like realistic representational drawing, but maybe like, does she believe in abstract art? Does she think that these other forms of messy art are beautiful too? Then, you know, there's so many different ways to make quote unquote good art. And really it's just about I think how you feel when you're making it is what matters. Are you having fun when you're making it? Because if you are, then I feel like that translates to whoever is viewing it.
We had one more question in the chat, which is, and feels really related to that kind of Pisces Virgo axes that you are living in. It says, out of curiosity, how do you balance discipline and spontaneity with creativity? I don't want to be super rigid with myself, but I also have a lot of different creative interests and I struggle with being consistent with my practice.
I usually will, I like school. So I'm a former art teacher. And I'm starting my program, and it's the alternative art school. And I take myself through, I'm like my own art teacher. So just like you have art teachers that give you prompts, you can do that with yourself. You can give yourself a prompt. You can give yourself like a theme to explore. So I usually will pick something for the semester, for the season that I'm taking myself through. Right now, it actually is DJing, which is really fun, and music. And in the past, I was doing like, okay, I was working on a portfolio. So I'm like, I'm going to do this portfolio this semester, and here's how I'm going to do it. I put myself in a bunch of different community arts classes in a local center nearby around the corner. So I don't think there's anything wrong with having a lot of different interests because they're all related. And even if you do switch around, like I'll write in the mornings, and then sometimes I'm doing music in the mornings, and sometimes I'm in a ceramics class. So really, I think for me, it's also just about setting the container, like you said earlier, Jesse. Like I'll be like, okay, 2 hours in the morning, this is my sacred creative time. In that space, I can do whatever I feel like, so long as I'm doing something creative. So it's really just having that container that I'm going to be in my creative practice, whatever it is that's important to you right now or that's calling you right now. Maybe you have a few different options if that's what feels good, whatever is accessible to you.
Beautiful. I want to let you get to your 7 o'clock.
I'll be
moment.
okay, but
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Is there other questions? Anything else?
Well, I had a question that someone had commented on earlier, which was the idea, and I know, we're both people, and I know, there's other people in this room that I've been in their business enough to know they relate to this, but like, what is the connection between like art and business, making art your business? I think in the past, like a comment I've made to sometimes to people who make a thing, and then they're like, I'm thinking about starting to work for myself. And I always am like, you should think about if you would like to make 1,000 of those things, um, and see how it goes from there. But yeah, I'm curious, what's your, it sounds like art and work have kind of been intertwined for you for a long time. So
Mhm.
there wasn't necessarily like an active weaving together of those things, but maybe like what are some of the challenges or what are some of your takeaways?
Yeah. There actually was a major weaving for a long time because for the last 7 years, most of what I was doing was teaching a creative approach to business. And because I became an entrepreneur and it started out as teaching like how to create your creative projects, pretty much a lot of what I'm doing now. And then slowly that evolved into like teaching a creative approach to how to get your projects in the world and marketing and that sort of thing. And the reason why I did that was because I was really surprised that when I was learning about digital marketing, all of the same things that I learned in art education applied. Moving through your inner critics, being seen, taking up space, telling your stories, branding, it's all very creative. So for me, I found that business is another medium and all the same rules of creativity apply. And when you take those concepts and you put them into your business, you end up with something that is a lot more unique, that works better because it reflects who you truly are. And so for me, they've been almost the same, and I've tried to approach my business like an art form. There are definitely some differences, though. Like in an art form, you're really just wanting to express yourself. In a business, you're marketing and sharing and selling things. It's like a different end goal in some ways. Um, and then is your question about for people who like want to sell their creations as well?
It can be. Someone had just commented earlier, like, that a way that they've made space to be able to prioritize their art is kind of like by making it their business, because then it's
Mhm.
like sort of like, well, I guess I have to do this.
Yeah, I've done a lot of helping people who are artists create a stream of income through teaching their art form. So becoming a teacher themselves of what it is they're creating, which is what I've always done too. Um, I just feel like the online space is quite saturated. The things that are going to stand out, the things that actually work, and I think the reason why my business was successful from the beginning was because I have this practice of getting to know myself and expressing it and learning how to express myself. And so that has been very helpful when it comes to marketing and branding and creating something that is not me emulating what else is out there, but pulling from my own creative mission, my own inspirations. It just lands better because it feels more authentic. So even if all this looks like is you just having your creative practice for fun, but in that time, you will be getting downloads, you will be getting inspired ideas, you'll be getting more clear on what it is that you want to be doing, on what it is that you're passionate about, what you want to talk about. So I feel like they're totally interrelated. Um, yeah, they're interrelated as much as you want them to be. For some people, making a business out of their creativity is not what they want because it can sometimes change the energy and they just want art for art's sake, which is also great. But if you are in business, I would highly recommend putting some love and attention on your creativity because that's going to make marketing your works so much easier. Like marketing is all creative. Jesse and I both wrote books that was so creative, and then we've been creating marketing strategies as well. And it can just be so much more fun if you're connected to your muse in the process. Actually, my business academy was called the Muse Business Academy, and it was all about connecting to the muse and making your business an offering to that. So I think you have all the answers within you, and connecting to your creativity can help you find them.
Yeah, it was iterated again in the comments, and I also wrote it down. Business is another medium, right? Because I love that, and I really relate to that. I feel like I've channeled most of my creative force like through Money Witch for the last decade. That's been like where a lot of my energy has gone, and I'm definitely having I'm shifting into a different relationship between like sort of separating my creativity and my business in certain ways, but that's a whole long conversation. But it is also coming up in the chat. It says, for me, I've had to do a lot of work to figure out the difference between my business, me selling some types of art I make, and my larger creative need. They overlap a lot, but always figuring out where they differ because they're not the same. Everything I make isn't for sale.
Mm. Yeah, it's true. And so I think you need to figure out what is the intention behind the things that you're creating, because you don't want to always be thinking about the work that you're creating and what everybody else is going to be thinking about it, which a lot of times that is the biggest difference in marketing versus creativity. In one, it's purely about self-expression. In the other, it's not actually about you. It's about supporting your people to figure out if this is for them or not. So it's actually not for you. However, there is a sweet spot in business. If you are in business, there is a sweet spot that, when, for me at least, when I'm creating things that I'm creatively inspired by or aligned to, I always put more into it. I feel better about it. It doesn't feel as much like work. So for my clients, I'm always trying to find that sweet spot of like, okay, where are your passions? Where are your interests? What flows from you that you want to be sharing that's easy for you? Okay, how can we match that to somebody else's need so that it's like a puzzle piece. What you're offering is what they need.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I feel like, at almost a decade in my business, in the same business, I really have like moved a lot in the last couple years to being like, I can feel like I'm almost more ready to like, or I've gotten more sophisticated in like, where do I want to put my energy and my creativity in the business?
Mm-hmm.
And something I really realized for myself personally is like, I don't love marketing. I don't want to do the marketing. I want to be the talent in my business.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy to be like the face of the business. I want to teach, I want to think, and I want to write, but this was the year that I was like, I'm a writer. I hate writing sales copy. Like if I could never write sales copy again for the rest of my life, I would gladly. However,
Totally.
it's a struggle, it is a struggle when you have a unique voice to find, copywriters are a thing, right? But when you're like a unique individual, there's some challenge, or you have a unique business, there's some challenge. But I've really been feeling like this separation of like, I feel really clear about like the ways I want to be creative in my business and the ways I don't. And it doesn't always line up with the timeline of it too, because this year for me, I'm like, actually this whole year, I've decided to be like, no, you have to just sell things on the internet. You know what I mean? Like you have to market on the internet. That's been like what I had to do all year. And I felt really clear about like, well, if I'm gonna have to do that, I'm gonna do it the funnest way possible, right? Like I'm gonna be like, it's sexy self-care summer. Like we're having slumber parties. Cause to me, that's about bringing my childhood sparkle. Like I'm like, if I have to sit down and market on the internet all year, this is what we're doing. Right now for my fall campaign, we were doing these reels with like Barbies. I made a Barbie that looks like me. I'm like, okay, how can we have fun with it? But it's like so interesting because I've been feeling also this separation where I'm like, I'm almost ready to creatively separate a little bit from the business, from like the workings of the business, and care less about like if that's the medium through which I'm expressing my creativity, even though it really has been, you know, the
I love
workings of the
that.
business have been where I have expressed my creativity for almost a decade.
I love that for you. And I think it's important to have both. And I think that having a creative practice that's not all about commodification of it, um, is only going to benefit everything else that you do, whether it's your relationships or your business or whatever else, because the arts are what make us feel alive. It's what makes us feel passionate. It's what makes us continue to want to show up for the things that we're doing. It restores our energy. Um, and after a while, for some of us, when we've been in business as long as we have, there are certain things that you can just kind of rinse and repeat and keep using, and you don't always need to be generating new things sometimes in your business. Um, yeah, but I hear you when it comes to the marketing. That's something that I feel like people don't talk about enough in entrepreneurship is many of us did not come into this to become rock star marketers. And in fact, we just want an avenue to share our gifts. So I've been thinking about that too in my business, and what are the ways that I can make it easier on myself to share and to present, like doing things like this where I get to come into other people's communities is great. Um, yeah, and finding ways to make it feel sustainable and accessible. I don't really work with copywriters as much anymore, but I do have just a ton of copy everywhere that I work with. I personally am a fan of AI. I'm not going to sit here and say that I think AI is art, because I don't. I think that you have to have a soul to create art. But I do use it for things like in my business to help make things faster, make things easier, so that I can focus on what really matters. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I know that my creative practice is more important than I give it credit for, because what sells is your energy, your magnetism, the uniqueness of what you're creating. Does it speak to people? And if it speaks to you, it's going to speak to them. But you need to create that space that you can really hear what wants to come through you.
Yes, but not through the medium of the email. Nothing wants to come through me through the medium of the email.
And
That's
maybe it
over
starts
it.
as like a free write in your journal, or like you meditate about it, or maybe you paint something and that gives you an inspired idea. I wonder if there's like ways you could use creativity to make the marketing a little more fun. You're like,
I'm
no.
just like, no, I'm like, I feel pretty determined to make it someone else's job, like as much and as
I
quickly as
love that for
possible.
you.
I'm like,
I
not
love
my
that for you
job.
if you can find that.
I know it's been funny because I really realized, you know, I mean, I think it is just a different standpoint in business. Like, you know, when you've had, how long have you, I mean, you seems like you've been having your business for quite a while in
Yeah, I've
different
had my
iterations.
business for 8 years now.
Mhm. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it is just like different phases. Something that happened to me and how I realized my journey to realizing that I didn't like marketing is that I thought for probably about 7 years, I thought that I was great at marketing and that I liked marketing. Or that it wasn't a problem, that I was like inherently creative at marketing. And then it was like a realization that like actually I didn't understand what marketing was. And what I thought was marketing was actually being the talent. And then I was like, oh, I'm great at being the talent. But the thing that's marketing is like the thing where you send like 5 emails in a row about the same thing. And I was like, oh, actually, I hate that. That's not that. That's not, and I'm bad at it, which is, you know, it was so funny. You know, I think just it's one of those ways too that like having different literacies can help you um find a place of self-awareness, you know, as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, but it's interesting. I
Totally.
mean, I know a lot of people in this group are people who like are entrepreneurs and are like, you know, have deeply interesting, unique, creative businesses that we've like brought
Cool.
our own like freaky slant on the world too.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with this conversation, and I've been in the same question of like, okay, how do I make this feel better? Because the marketing aspect of my business has definitely been a challenge, because I love to teach, I love to educate, I love to deliver content. But yeah, the marketing is like a whole other job. And as entrepreneurs, really we're doing like
All
five
the
people's
jobs are
jobs.
yours. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, it's funny because especially when it is healing and it's kind of like a calling, you know, I've heard you say that. It's something I say about my business too. where I'm like, really, all I want is like, I want to help people heal their relationship with money. And I think it's deeply liberatory. But you have to get people through the door. And I think a lot of times I feel like a Mary Poppins type character where I'm sort of like, oh, here's the spoonful of sugar. You know what I mean? I'm like, what if I'm funny and cute? Then will you heal your finances? You know? Or like, what if I like made it turquoise? Like, then would you heal your finances? And it does work, right? But it's kind of like following people around with the spoon of sugar and then being like frustrated when you're like, I don't know, you have to like make a new spoon, or I don't know, get a new bag, or like keep scooping it out, or something.
Yeah.
And
I
that's the
love
business aspect.
Yeah, and the way I think about it also is that this is a job, and all jobs have aspects of it that are not great, that we don't really want to be doing. Like, no matter if I were to go get a day job, there would be things there that I probably wouldn't feel like doing. So I just try and like think of it like, okay, I'm hiring myself to do some of these things, and
Totally. That's a good
that's
angle.
also helped. Yeah. If only we could all just make our art all day long. That's what I want for us all in a post-capitalist future.
Beautiful. I love that idea. Go
Mhm.
ahead.
I was just gonna say before I go that I do have a quiz too that's free if people want to take, and it'll help you learn more about what I call your elemental archetype, which is your unique approach to how you like to create and manifest. So I can pop that into, and it's free.
Beautiful. Yeah, pop it in the chat.
Okay, cool.
And where can we find you if we want your guidance in our
Yeah.
endeavors? How do we find you?
So the best place is probably to get on the email list, which if you take the quiz, you will be added onto it. You can also just go to my website and check it out. And there's probably a newsletter sign up somewhere towards the top. Um, I have my tarot workshop that I have a link for. I'm offering this to you all at a discount, at a big discount. So it's an intro to tarot cards if you're interested in learning my Wildheart approach to reading tarot. I'm giving you all $22 off of it. I set it to expire tonight, but I'm going to change that for people on the replay, maybe to like the weekend, after the weekend.
Cool.
So $22 off. You just use the code MONEYWITCH, all caps, and that'll help you. And then we can vibe out on tarot. That's a tool that's one of the first tools that I love to teach. And in this 90-minute workshop, I'm going to be giving you everything that you need to know to read tarot, or to at least get started on your journey. And then find me on Instagram, which is another place that I love to share. I use stories on Instagram a lot. So come follow me. My handle everywhere is Radiant Wildheart, and my website is also radiantwildheart.com. So don't be a stranger. Please do tag me in your art if you feel like, if this got you inspired to create something. I'd love to see it, and I'm happy to share it too. So it's been awesome to get to connect with you all, and I love all the engagement that we've had in the chat. It's been a really beautiful conversation.